Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We are Swimming in Popcorn, and today we are bringing you a back-to-back double feature. I will be uploading a discussion for Halloween Kills right after this review is uploaded, so make sure to show some love and support for the channel and the work that goes into making these videos by checking out that video as well. You never know, you might get some awesome new insight to a particular scene you've never noticed, or you could just close this video now and save your declining mental health from any more abuse. That's always an option too. Watching the newest release of Halloween in 2018 is a moment I will never forget. The franchise itself is deeply rooted within my family and holds a special place in my heart, cemented by many years of movie marathons. Memories of watching them in order with my father on his weekends off from work leaves a strong feeling of nostalgia that I can't find words to describe. Being that I was too young to see most of the beginning era of the franchise in theaters, it wasn't until I was 16 did I see my first Halloween film on the big screen. It was the original 1978 film, and it was in that moment that I learned you can't recreate the magic of the big screen at home, no matter how wonderful your setup is. The next film I saw at my local cinema was the Rob Zombie reboot, and let's just say it scorched my ass hair so bad I didn't watch the sequel to that film until years after it was available for home viewing, and I still regret the amount of eye bleach it took to unsee what I watched. Leading up to the 2018 film's release felt like a kid in December again, waiting a few weeks for Christmas morning with the season in the air. My family, friends, and I watched every trailer, every interview, every piece of news, regardless of rumor or spoiler that we possibly could. To put it short, we were nothing less than over the moon for opening night. Leaving the theater that night left me with more emotions than when I arrived. The drive home and the following hours were spent with my family and friends, discussing and dissecting everything we could. I saw the 2018 release 6 times before it became available for watching at home. Fast forward a few years later, and not only has Halloween Kills been around for a bit, with its fair share of complaints and negative talking points from the general online fan base, but I find myself unable to deny that it is my favorite film of the entire franchise, and I find myself rewatching it the most. Halloween Kills ends up to the same Halloween night the previous film ended on, directly mirroring the original sequel to the 1978 film. Clever nod to John Carpenter's directing, or just creative laziness? I'll let you guys decide. Characters that made appearances in the prior film return to give us answers and some closure on their fates that were left out to dry previously. One of my original complaints from the 2018 film were the build-up and development of characters like Officer Hopkins, the sheriff, Cameron Elam, and Allison's father, being fleshed out as the movie progressed only to be dropped abruptly or killed off anyways, without any kind of meaningful death. Don't get me wrong, every slasher movie has to have its share of low-investment characters to be thrown into the grinder for our entertainment. There's never a question about that. Hell, even asking us the viewers to emotionally attach and invest in certain characters that will eventually be killed off is not out of the question, if their deaths have weight. Substance, integrity, and depth are words that come to mind when I think of what I want from a Halloween film as a fan. Unfortunately, it's these core values where the film suffers the most. Halloween Kills brings legacy characters back 40 years later, but what it doesn't do is make sure there's a solid foundation of cake underneath the nostalgia icing they are spreading. We should be asking ourselves, why? Why are we watching the same characters again 40 years later just to die off one after one without any reasoning? In times where every form of media is using shock value to bring in new viewers, there's not much more at this point we as fans can find that we aren't numb to. Evil, being infectious metaphorically and physically, is the theme that is constantly thrown at us throughout the movie. We are reminded non-stop that the effects Michael Myers had on Haddonfield extended multiple generations, so why not indulge us in that? Why not show new characters and how the fear and terror altered the reality and lives that they have had to live due to the damage Michael Myers caused 40 years ago? The 2018 film touched on this in a scene just briefly, suggesting that by today's standards, 3 people being stabbed to death is pretty mild for what we watch in our local news. This film, as its title applies, spends its entirety massacring and killing off practically every returning character, and I can't help but find myself wondering, how much better would it have been with new faces that we had grown attached to since the 2018 film, having their appearance in the film drive the plot forward, and their deaths leave us with an impact that we seek comfort for. While I respect these new films grounding themselves in some way to their origins of keeping Michael an unstoppable killing machine without motive, it's the supporting characters and their presumable deaths that keep this emotional element balanced with their relationships to the main characters. While I feel Halloween Kills hinted on this with Cameron and Karen's death, they soon fall back off the rails quickly. Tommy Doyle, Sheriff Brackett, Marion Chambers all deserve better treatment in writing than they received. But most importantly, we as fans deserve to see new characters in the universe further continue the franchise after the company is done milking the Strode bloodline. Scream and Alien are both franchises with recent films that have achieved this exact success. However, what else can we expect with Blumhouse at the helm? Keeping the negative momentum going for a moment, let's discuss the whole evil dies tonight mob. I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast has heard or seen everyone, and I mean fucking everyone, comment on this point of the movie. We know evil creates evil, spreading fear and terror that infects each and every one of us to our cores in different ways. But what happens when that becomes the environment of your community? Do people cope with the trauma by turning to drugs and alcohol, losing sight on life and getting stuck in an endless vicious cycle of self-loathing? Do we allow that same evil to consume us, altering our path forward by corrupting our souls so that we too act with maliciousness towards those around us without remorse? If you have ever allowed these thoughts to send you down a rabbit hole of your own making, then I can safely assure you, Halloween Kills gives absolutely zero shits about your self-awareness or logical processes. The residents of Haddonfield mistake an inmate from the institution's bus crash for Michael Myers himself, as they erupt into a mindless, chaotic flash mob, chasing him throughout the hospital. The event tragically ends as the inmate throws himself out of an upper story window, splattering his head content all over the parking lot for onlookers. Now, I believe the intent of this scene was for the writers to convey to us a moment of self-reflection. That maybe when we succumb to the fear's grip, we all have a bit of evil in us. However, this is absolutely the worst way to convey this message, asking us to believe that a community that has been emotionally restricted from growth for over 40 years apparently has never once remotely seen a picture of Michael Myers and confused this guy for him. If I'm not mistaken, they even show Michael's face on the news earlier on the TV at the bar. The simple truth is there was a lack of effort at the writing table, and unfortunately for the film, it leaves a stain in fans' minds that won't be forgotten. Something a bit more realistic could have been the hospital staff or mob putting an injured Lori and her family out to survive against Michael. The mob mentality in the heat of the moment could see them being the tying link or reason Michael is terrorizing the small town again. With my biggest complaints of the film out of the way, I'd love to show the flowers that the movie does deserve. In the history of the Halloween franchise, the implied and projected notion that has repeatedly been implanted on our minds is that Michael Myers is the embodiment of evil. There's no rhyme, no reason, or even remotely a sense of reasoning for Michael's madness. He is not to be viewed as a human, but as evil itself in the form of a man, and it's this premise that the film delivers its greatest strengths. I found myself joyful for the amount of screen time Michael has, and that in my opinion, none of it was potentially wasted. Every scene he was in, I felt myself rooting for him to place the finishing blows on the characters he shared the scene with, and for once, it wasn't from the actors' performances. Halloween Kills truly delivers Michael Myers to us in the form of a brutal, moral-less killing machine by all definitions. Children are stalked and butchered, with their heads being used to smash windshields while they play at the park. Nurse Marion is stabbed to death, trapped and confined inside a vehicle after giving a tribute to Dr. Loomis with a gun that was empty. Thriving firefighters, arriving on scene to the engulfed Strode residents, are soon dismembered and displayed across the lawn like seasonal decor. A nurse receives a blade through his eye, puncturing his brain. Michael kicks open a car door, spinning the gun held by a doctor and blowing her own brains out. The gay couple living in the Myers' newly remodeled home meet their fate as Michael returns to the property, poetically gouging out one of their eyes to be empty eye sockets like the mask he wears. Even Cameron Elam comes face to face with our star killer, having his neck spun in every direction like the gear shift in a Fast and the Furious movie. While my point earlier about legacy characters' death being meaningless still stands, as a fan, we were fully fed with the destruction and mayhem Michael's rampage produced. The duality of the 2018 film being a showdown at Laurie's home, and the ending of this film being a showdown in Michael's home, was a very nice touch that I noted on. To pick up from a notable performance aspect, Judy Greer really delivered on her role as the anchor of the family. To play a grieving wife and mother effectively already requires more skill than I can attribute words to. But to further a bridge between her mother, Laurie, with her irrational trauma responses, and her own daughter, who at such a young age has forced to comprehend the death of her father and friends, really puts into perspective her acting abilities. In a world of destruction and instability, Karen ironically seems to be, with the knowledge she has at the time, one of the most believable and respectable characters written into this film. Now, this isn't to say that Allison suffers from a lack of character development, but to imply that this movie more so felt like the ending was for her character to reach the climax of her journey, and that the fruits of those two movies' emotional derailment would come to view in the final film of the trilogy. Another high note of praise that I can't stop singing is the film's choice of location and scenery. Full disclosure to our viewers, let's just say I live very close by to most of where this movie was shot, and the amount of work some scenes receive to make it look different than the location in reality deserves praise. However, even the scenes where no post-production CGI was used stands on their own two legs. The hospital, though a bit small, felt very updated and modern. The local bar where Tommy's monologue put us all to sleep 10 minutes into the film gives a very warm and local small-town dive bar vibe. As Michael stands on the bridge, hunting Lindsay at the dimly lit park, the trees providing the shadows she hides behind also give the feeling they could be hiding a gator in the water that's up to her waist. While I'll be the first to admit I'm not sure how many chances the director got to film Laurie's compound burning down, every frame from that scene felt like God himself was guiding the cameraman. Michael walking slow motion out the front door of a home engulfed in flames with a Halligan tool, approaching a crowd of firefighters with pure fear in their eyes, is nothing but complete fan service. As a fan, I was completely satisfied. Side note, the replica of the Myers home that was built for this movie absolutely felt like a natural and healthy modern version of the home we first saw 40 years ago, which is impressive in itself. The area I find myself in conflict with the most is the behaviors of the characters themselves. The more I try and break this down in my mind, the more I find resolve in the middle ground of accepting mediocrity. Somewhere down my mismanaged train of thought lies a line, somewhere between the acting is great, but the writing of the characters reflects the dumpster fire of a script, or the actors took this gig for the quick paycheck and gave zero self-reflection into the characters they were hired to portray. A perfect example of this is with Laurie herself. She is now hospital bedbound from her injuries. Once she learns that Michael has not fallen to the death trap she left him in, she decides to go on a long-winded rant about how she is the one destined to kill Michael, and how she is the one who brought forth his wrath upon Haddonfield. She is shoving pain med injections into her ass and thrusting her knee into mob members' stomachs shortly after. Now, is she just reliving trauma in a moment, and her dramatic overreactions are a direct result of that? Or did the writers forget to ask themselves if this is something viewers are going to be able to believe is an appropriate response in the midst of chaos? This complaint doesn't just cover Laurie. It can also be expanded to most of the characters in the film. Tommy, suffering from what can only be assumed as a severe paranoid type of psychosis, is implied to have visited the Halloween karaoke night every year at the dive bar with the same survivor speech we heard in the film. He is also responsible for fueling the mob with his insecurities and delusional paranoia of Michael Myers, probably stemming from some underlying subliminal effects that have shaped him throughout his life into the victim we see him as. This brings us back to the original point. Are we as fans jumping through imaginary hoops to bring means to ends that the writers were too lazy to think out? Or are the actors efficiently portraying the effect Michael Myers' evil and fear has infected and molded into the characters we are watching? As with all franchises that we associate our love of cinema with, separating our biased insight and opinions from universally accepted foundations of cinema can be challenging. Subjectively speaking, on something that hits close to home can feel like an impossible task, be it for our level of comfort rewatching them for nostalgic reasons, or the fear of ruining some things for ourselves we have always cherished so much. Halloween Kills, with its struggles in character development, inconsistent pacing, and a plot that doesn't take the franchise anywhere, still fulfills this fan's heart with its loyalty to its own name. I'm giving this film a 7 out of 10. The sheer thrill of seeing my favorite horror icon in the industry finally live up to his own legacy. Like the candy we look forward to receiving on Halloween night, Michael's massacre in Halloween Kills is a sweet treat that I can't stop coming back for time and time again, no matter how sour it may be. Hey guys, that's all the time that we have for today. I just wanted to say stay safe out there. Thanks for supporting the channel, and most importantly, stay munchin', stay crunchin', and I'll see you next time. Thanks guys.